Hello. As you know, and as we've talked about many times in the past, the vast majority of problems that I see and lawsuits that I see relate to non-disclosure claims. The buyer says that the agent and the seller failed to disclose some material fact to them during the transaction. Now, when I get these claims, the first thing I always do is call the agent. I want to hear their side of the story. I want to get a look at their file to see what the documents say. And when we have this conversation, I invariably hear the same thing from them. The agent will embark on a description of the multitude of inspections that the buyer had. The buyer had a roof inspection, they had a foundation inspection, they had a geologist, they had a regular inspection. And they'll go on and on telling me in detail all the inspections that this buyer had, as if somehow those inspections clears them of any potential non-disclosure problem. Well, the truth is that's not the case. And so I wanted to discuss it with you a little bit to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Specifically, if you have actual knowledge of a material fact, then as you know, it is your duty to disclose that material fact to the buyer. It doesn't matter if CAR has drafted a form which makes a general disclosure about that item, or if there's been an inspection on that subject. Those things do not protect you. The only thing that protects you is making actual written disclosure of all material facts that you're aware of. So for example, in the RPA itself, there's a paragraph about the Megan's Law database, and that paragraph describes to the buyer where they can go to investigate whether or not there's a registered sex offender near this particular property. But if you have actual knowledge that next door lives such an offender, that disclosure and that clause does not protect you. You still have the duty to disclose to the buyer that there's a registered offender next door to the house. That's actual knowledge. It's different than the generic terms in the disclosure in the RPA. Similarly, for example, we have oftentimes local area disclosures in our transactions. They'll talk about things like traffic in the neighborhood or the airport. Well, they're great if you don't have actual knowledge, but if you know that this particular house is right under the landing pattern for a particular airport, you've got to disclose it. That's actual knowledge. Finally, with inspections, there's the buyer's inspection advisory, and it tells the buyer to inspect all kinds of ridiculous things that they'll never inspect. Well, that's great and helpful, but it doesn't cover you, again, when you have actual knowledge. If you know about a roof leak, the fact that the buyer has a roof inspection doesn't protect you unless that inspection discovers that same condition. If it does, you're fine. You only need to tell the buyer a problem once. But having a roof inspection doesn't mean you're covered if you know of a particular leak problem and the inspector doesn't find it. So bottom line, forget all this, just make your disclosure. Always and every instance, disclose everything you know. That's the only way to protect yourself. Thanks a lot.